Welcome to the first episode of the second season of the Build Your People podcast with Kathy Humm. I'm your co-host, Jenn Dewees, and I'm also the president of the Maryland Center for Construction Education and Innovation, or MCCEI. At MCCEI, our mission is to inspire, educate, and connect a diverse population to careers in the built environment. We created the Build Your People podcast to help construction firms in their fight for talent. Recruiting and retention is our industry's biggest challenge, and we're here to help you tackle that every day. Today's guest is the founder and president of Ashton Manor Environmental. They have worked to build their business for over 20 years and now are really getting strategic about how they grow their business. Let's listen. This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Harkins Builders. At its core, Harkins is a construction manager specializing in multifamily, commercial, and government building projects. But look a little closer and you'll see more. You'll see a team of vetted professionals united by shared values, working every day to be the best possible partner. You'll see customized services like their unique pre-construction offering that go above and beyond what's expected in the industry. And you'll see a team who isn't satisfied until the project is completed in an exceptional way. Are you looking for a fulfilling career? Have you thought about owning your own business? As an employee-owned company, Harkins is always looking to grow their team with passionate professionals. Whether you're just starting your career or an expert in your specialty, build your future at Harkins. Welcome to the first episode of Season 2 of the Build Your People podcast with Kathy Humm. I'm your co-host, Jenn Dewees, and I'm also the president of the Maryland Center for Construction Education and Innovation. At MCCI, our mission is to inspire, educate, and connect a diverse population to careers in the built environment. With me is our podcast co-host, Kathy Humm. She's the HR professional and founder of NTP HR LLC. Hi, Kathy. How are you today?
Hi. How are you today, Jenn?
I'm pretty good, a little sniffly, so hopefully I don't interrupt our podcast too much with that. And as our viewers may see, Kathy and I have a guest today, Jeff Schwartz. He's the founder and president of Ashton Manor Environmental. Before we dive into our conversation, Jeff, please take a moment to introduce yourself and give us a brief overview of your business.
All right, great. Well, thank you both for having me. It's an honor to be part of this and share my experiences that we'll talk about later. I'm the founder and owner of Ashton Manor Environmental. We're a full-service landscape contracting company that also focuses on environmental mitigation projects. I founded the company 22 years ago with myself and 3 others, and we're now over 100 people, and we've really had a very solid run of growth and success throughout those 22 years.
Congratulations. That's really exciting. And hats off to you. So as we all know, today we're going to be talking about strategic planning, what its importance is in a business and what steps a business owner should take to create one. So I know, Kathy, we spent a lot of time last season talking about recruitment and retention strategies, but without a plan to drive your business, it's probably hard to plan for growth, correct? So it's hard to know where you're going without a roadmap. So, Kathy, I know you invited Jeff today because you're currently working with him on his strategic plan. And before we dive deep into the planning pool, can you share your perspective on the significance of investing in a strategic plan for a company's overall success?
Sure. Thanks, Jenn. You know, my business is HR consulting at a strategic level, and you hit on some of those things that we talked about last season: recruiting strategy, retention. How are you going to retain your people, from performance management strategy to best-in-class benefits to career paths and learning and development? Those things are all fantastic. We have to recruit and retain our workforce. But I strongly believe that the starting point is a strategic plan. No matter how big or small you are, I think there should be a roadmap on, what do you want to achieve, goals and tactics or rocks in the coming year, but also put the carrot out there for 3 years, 3 to 5 years, and 10 years. And what does that look like? So I'm always talking to clients and encouraging them to take this leap I think some of the smaller companies in particular, they started their business on what they do best, and they just kind of put their head down and they keep making profit year over year. And it's a little scary to take a step off the ledge there and to really peel back the onion and look at your financials and your org chart now and create a future state and core values and all the things that go into a strategic plan. So it's in my opinion, it's the first step with the whole HR strategy.
I could not agree more. We have just re-looked at our strategic plan at MCCI, and we've been around since 2009. It's our 15th anniversary this year. Not quite as long as Jeff, but we definitely have had strategic plans over years that have evolved, and we redid it, I think about 2 years ago, just about a year after I took over MCCI. And it's, I think, a really good point, even when you already have one, to make sure you have that time to look back and make sure, like, am I actually still sticking to what we said we needed to do in all our new initiatives and everything like that. That's great. Yeah. So, Jeff, you said you've been in business for 22 years. Is this the first time you have created a strategic plan, an official one?
It is. It's hard to believe that we've made it this far without one. But yes, it's the first time that we focused our efforts and energy, hired an amazing professional to help us with it. So yes.
So what motivated you to engage in it?
I think through a lot of my general business development growth, I realized that I had a pretty big blinder around this whole strategic planning thing. In the early years of the company, I would get the question about what's your plan and what's your 3 to 5 and I found myself mostly making sort of executive level excuses for why we didn't have one. And I think that there was many an occasion where we attempted to have our annual meeting that was usually facilitated by me, the owner of the company, and they just were not effective. And those meetings were better than doing nothing. Mm-hmm. But I've learned so much in this process and really uncovered the blinders that I had. There's so many sayings that come to mind. One of them is that you fix what you focus on, and we weren't exactly focusing on anything. So we are now, and we're in year 2, and I'm certainly glad that I got the blinders off and that we have jumped into this. Well,
you have survived 22 years, which is a lot longer than many companies do. So you obviously were focusing on some things, right. Keeping your clients happy, those types of things, I'm sure. But I completely understand when running a business, how overwhelming it can be just with the day-to-day, let alone like taking out that time. It's a significant investment of time and resources to do something like this. So I commend you for getting it going.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess this is probably a question for both Kathy and Jeff. Like, how did you approach like the initial stages of starting the strategic planning? How would you suggest someone do that?
I can start on this question. I think it's important that you kind of set a framework of how this process works, and you need commitment from the executive leadership team to set aside the right amount of time to be thinking higher level strategy for the organization, future state, current state, future state. And what I usually do is I break it down into pre-work, which is typically a 4-hour session, an off-site, which is usually an all-day session, and then a post-work. And then once the strategic plan is set, then you have quarterly sessions with the individuals who you have assigned as a lead for those objectives that you want to achieve over the course of the next year or 3 years, 5 years. So the biggest piece is laying the groundwork of how much time is this going to take and getting the commitment from the executive leadership. And when I say executive leadership, I think all functions of the organization should be involved. So pre-construction, production, accounting, HR, there may be another component of your business, but all of those functions should be involved in the strategic plan and and building it and then carrying it out and implementing it. Jeff?
Yeah, so not to double over too much of that, but some of the obstacles for me was, what is my executive leadership team? We are a small business. Because I wasn't focused on it, it was hard to get my teams to focus on it. So I like the concept of having a framework for sure. If there's other businesses my size or smaller thinking about this process, I think it's important to take the team you have. They've certainly gotten you where you are. So it was important for me to get over the hump and say, okay, I do have a good leadership team here. Let's get everybody to the table. It's also, I think there's a transformational mindset from the owner leading the charge on every single item and training myself to delegate things down by doing this process, using the framework, allowing yourself to delegate down. These people begin to have ownership of things. And, back to one of the early challenges, I felt like I was running these annual meetings. It was just my agenda. Now we've got a framework where we've delegated out ownership to different people. This year's town hall meeting, which is really our kickoff every year for the strategic plan, that's where these leads now feel ownership. They're presenting their department, and it's not just the owner giving the owner's perspective update on every single area of the company.
I mean, and that's key, and a key point back to retention and training of your employees. You're creating leaders rather than just through the delegation process. And I think having a seasoned facilitator like Kathy lead you guys through it, it helps, because I remember the first time I did a strategic plan, I was with NAWEC, National Association of Women in Construction. I was on the board, and they had a facilitator who was like, most of us there had never done a strategic plan in our lives. We weren't business owners. We were just leading a volunteer organization. But by the time we were done, we knew what we were talking about because we had somebody who does this all the time leading. And I think it's key, because now you can actually trust that you don't have to do everything by yourself. So it's almost a little bit of succession planning for you as well.
Yeah, sure.
It's really great. So, talked a little bit about some of the challenges. So who did you involve? I know I've worked for small businesses too. You probably don't have a director of things, right? So how did you make that decision?
So it was important for us, with Kathy's direction, to really get as many voices at the table as we could at all levels throughout the company. And so we, aside from maybe our most entry level positions in the field, the crew level, we involved people at almost every other level. From our project managers, we took our best of class, whoever they were, brought them to the table. Each area of the business, we have a fleet manager that manages our fleet and equipment. Obviously, a huge spend for the company, a huge piece of the puzzle. We have both a safety consultant and a safety manager. Again, we want them at the table. If we're really going to walk the walk on safety as a construction company, they have to be part of those meetings and discussions. And then, to your point, in each department, if we didn't have a vice president or a director level, we took the highest or best personality person that will lean into this process, and brought them to the table. So we were a group of about 20 people. And it's important to have it the right size. You don't want 50 people, but you don't want 2 either. So for us, a senior estimator in the estimating department, a senior project manager, somebody that has the right soft skills, hard skills, is involved in the company enough, and it has the ability to bring out the best in their respective area, whether it doesn't matter that they're not a director or vice president level.
Honestly, I think I really appreciate that too, because you probably got a lot of diversity of thought in there too. It wasn't just the same level person, the same role. It sounds like you had a really great team behind you on that.
Well, I think the key is that you're getting ownership. The more you push down those objectives and identify a lead for that objective to move it from no action to in progress to completed, you're getting that buy-in. And people want to be involved in the growth of an organization. So I think that's really critical.
Absolutely. You want to feel like they're making a difference and
Yeah,
punch
yeah.
that clock. That's pretty awesome. So I guess with 20 people involved in the process, how did you ensure that there was like effective collaboration communication throughout all the planning stages?
So again, we wouldn't have been able to do it without Kathy or a facilitator of her skill level. We had some assigned roles in the meetings from the nitty gritty where somebody was tracking, taking action items away. Then Kathy, as a facilitator, would process all that after the meetings, disseminate the information. But cadence, follow up, and follow through is super critical. And speaking transparent, it's not a skill set that my company is fantastic at. Maybe other small companies that are listening to this can relate to that. So having somebody ultimately own the communications, the accountability of meeting deadlines, pre-work before each quarter, helping prepare the presentations for the meetings, having that outside resource, I found to be really a key component of making sure people were doing what they committed to doing. They were taking an action item and running with it and being ready to report back at those quarterly meetings.
And I think the hardest thing is to actually set a cadence of meetings and stick to it. So setting those in advance, and for I find that quarterly strategic planning sessions with the leads of the objectives they're assigned to, having that whole group together every quarter and talking about where they are on moving the needle on that particular objective is really important. And like Jeff said, holding them accountable. They're talking among their peers. This was my assignment and here's where I am. And, peer-to-peer accountability is the most successful. So if you have them in a group and they're not doing what they should be doing and they have to share where they are, it's more meaningful.
Absolutely. And I know as I guess I'm not a business owner, but nonprofit leader, it is hard when you're trying to manage the day to day. And if you didn't have like, you spent the money on getting a facilitator like Kathy, right? And then you've got Kathy saying, all right, we've got a meeting coming up. Like you're not just letting yourself down, you'd be letting her down, your team down. So it is super helpful to dedicate that outside resource. Even if you think you can do this yourself, I think it's important to the process to make sure you have a facilitator for it. Even if it's just somebody who's maybe a fellow business owner, you can't afford a facilitator. I'm not saying that I think you should invest in your business by hiring a facilitator.
Yeah.
But if not, if you know somebody who is willing to help you out, at least, I think it's.
Well, I would say even if you're a small company, you don't have the funds to go through this process. There are several books out there. Pinnacle is one of them that comes to mind, where it kind of lays out how you can go through the process yourself. The problem is holding yourself accountable to do the things that you should do with your team is the hardest thing. And having a facilitator to nudge that process along is super helpful. But regardless of whether you hire someone or you try to do it yourself, it's a really, really important process. I was talking with a client the other day, and they don't have monthly financial meetings, based on the business financials. So it's important. That's a piece of it. Every month you should be talking about your business financials, not project financials, overall business. So that's, there's so many different layers to this.
Absolutely.
Kathy, you just jogged my mind, and there's two books that I always recommend to young entrepreneurs, seasoned small business owners, They're both Gino Wickham books, and one is Traction and one is Rocket Fuel. And they're my two go-to books that were meaningful for me. And I think that I usually recommend Rocket Fuel to folks that either are new entrepreneurs, seasoned entrepreneurs, have a business partner, thinking about a business partner. But that book alone really helped me to frame kind of who I am, where and what my values and roles are to my organization. And then the Traction book, while it is sort of one framework and they do have facilitators, that's going to get you in the mindset and understanding the importance of strategic planning, of rocks as they're called. And it's both of those books would be very foundational ahead of starting your first strategic planning.
And I guess piggybacking off of that, you know, when you're setting a plan, you have to think about goals and what are realistic and achievable goals. So how do you work through that process on setting goals for yourself, and then making sure that they are like smart goals, and not just a pie in the sky?
Yeah, so I think that really comes into play with the pre-work sessions. Kathy does a really good job of pushing you to both have SMART goals and have some borderline unrealistic reach goals. The SMART goals in my company, that whole concept was new actually, of what is a SMART goal, why do we need them, what makes a SMART goal. So there was a learning curve there on all levels of the company. We leaned into that. We do use that as a framework now. And I think that it's super important to commit to that pre-work. We engage the higher level leaders in those various areas for the pre-work. Again, a little bit of my blinders. We don't need strategic planning, whatever. Every business needs KPIs. You need some SMART goals. And what we're learning in year 2 is part of this is just the entire process of getting them on paper, having your core focuses of your strategic plan. It gives everybody the language, the roadmap, even if it's not 100% correct, even if your goals, you miss a goal or you have to change a goal, that's okay. Just getting the process started, having them has already shown me so many benefits throughout the company.
So it's interesting, you talk about how do you identify goals, and, we start with the SWOT analysis and understand what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what your opportunities, threats. And through just that discussion alone, you kind of unravel, we don't have the right people in the right seats on the bus, and we really don't have this position and we need that position. And so your themes of, what you want to focus on, and I usually recommend 3, kind of rise to the top. So in Jeff's example, in Jeff's situation, people is one of their themes. We got to get the right people in the right seats on the bus, and we've got to attract them. We've got to retain them. I have another client who wants to double their company in the next 3 years, and so they have this some of their workforce is young and they need training, and so training bubbled to the top. So that's one of their themes. We've got to focus on training. So it's different for every company, but coming up with 3 themes, and then it's easier to delineate, okay, what are the specific goals we have to achieve? In Jeff's situation, they have processes, but they need to automate them. And operational excellence is one of their themes that they're focusing on year over year, to automate, to have processes from pre-construction to construction. So it's an interesting process. And the more you have that are talking through this, it evolves and you come up with those themes and the goals and objectives or rocks that you want to achieve over a period of time.
I love that idea. That's very helpful. I would imagine like the theme concept, and I've not utilized that before in any of my strategic planning, so I'm gonna have to borrow that one.
Yeah, and it's the whole process, and Jeff can attest to this. It's a little overwhelming and a little daunting if you've never done it. So you're like, I don't even know where to begin. So you begin with conversation. You begin with, I always start with the pre-work. Give me 3 things, words, phrases that describe your culture, and kind of start with the culture and build your core values. And then it's, what do you think's working? What's not working? Oh, you get the kitchen sink thrown at you, right? And so then you start peeling that back, and the conversation itself leads to what are the 3 theme areas that we want to focus on.
No, I like that. So, you've got your plan, you come up with your goals and objectives and your KPIs. I would imagine, that business, environments change. The economy changes, maybe suddenly a market sector that you didn't think was going to take off is taking off. Like, how do you ensure that a strategic plan remains flexible and adaptable?
So I'll jump in. It really boils down to the cadence of your meetings. And one of my excuses we don't need a strategic plan is it doesn't allow you to be nimble enough. What happens when COVID hits? How do you pivot? And the fact, a strategic plan gives you a framework road where, when you're driving down a major interstate, there's 2 or 3 exits that'll get you to the same place. And so I don't think that you have to be locked in super tight, and that you're going to be meeting on it minimally quarterly. So you have opportunities throughout the year to revisit it back to sort of what's working, what's not. You're going to see, did we miss the boat here? Did we think this goal was going to take us in this direction, and that's the plan? It allows for a structured conversation around the goals. You can talk about what's influencing it. Maybe there, like you said, there's a new bid opportunity, something that came out of left field that you weren't expecting, and it's going to cause you to shift your resources. But the business has thought about it in a strategic manner. You're not just chasing every squirrel. You're actually, moving in a directed way. And that does involve retooling, pivoting around what's being, what the business is experiencing.
As a former business development professional, hearing you say that you're not chasing every single bid that comes across is music to my ears. I strongly believe in a solid go, no go process for any of those. So if you don't have one, let me know.
That's interesting because we did just have a town hall, and there was a lively discussion around a bid that one of the estimators worked very hard on, but Jeff and the leadership team, through this strategic planning process, what jobs are profitable, what aren't, what work are we chasing, what work aren't we chasing, at what price, are we budging, not budging, are we increasing, reducing our price, whatever it is. They decided not to take this job. And it was an interesting conversation because she said it was hard to hear, but being in those meetings, she realizes the why.
Yeah.
And the whole goal is to make the company make more strategic decisions on profitable growth for the organization. So it's been an eye-opener, right, Jeff?
Yeah, and it's also, we have a fundamental programming around our culture, and that gives us language and words to use around performance. Let's say the strategic plan gives you the words, the tools. Does it align with the strategic plan? We've actually in 22 years not heavily focused on the work, the profitability, and we're now able to have very transparent conversations that we do need to make a profit in this company, and we do have a benchmark number now and a goal, and everything we do is going to be around that goal.
Yeah.
And that alone, that component of our strategic plan, which our 3 pillars essentially are people, profitability of the company, and operational excellence. And then we drill down from each one of those things, and it really allows you to continue to refer back to your plan, regardless if you're talking about maybe making a change, that's fine, but how does it align or doesn't it align with what we set out at the onset of the year or even last year?
That's really great. So obviously your entire company wasn't involved in the strategic planning. And I know you said you have town halls, which do you invite your whole team to the town halls?
We do, and that's a great question because that was equally a blinder spot for me. I was very nervous and scared of a town hall meeting when I knew about them. I've been at companies that have had them, but that felt like a big corporate company thing to do. And so we do have two separate town hall meetings. Everybody in the company is certainly invited, and we try and get 100% attendance to the best we can. We do a field level one, if you will, which has all the essential information packaged maybe a little bit differently based on that audience. We do it in English and Spanish. We have a large Spanish workforce. And if we're going to really walk the walk, do it justice, we have to translate it. We have to make sure we're giving ourselves the best chance for understanding. And then we do a separate one with the project management level and up, we call it, the office side, if you will. And that we have a more time allocated. We do drill down a little deeper with that team. And both sessions, we welcome questions. And this year in the field one, we got some very, very good, appropriate questions related to profitability and the numbers and how the organization is working financially. And that was a big win for us.
That's awesome. So beyond your town hall, what other communication strategies did you use to share it with your employees? Do your customers know about your strategic plan? Any other stakeholders?
It's a good question. I would say there's probably still opportunity for us to increase the messaging of it. We've done some social media broadcasting of what we've done, what we're doing at a high level. Haven't really gotten to the crossroads of where, what, how we would want to share outside the company.
I would imagine beyond customers that if I'm interviewing for a firm that I know has a plan, and therefore if they have a plan for themselves, they probably haven't planned for their employees. I would feel good about that. So I would imagine it's a way that you could use it in recruitment as well as the retention that you're currently using it for too.
Absolutely, Jen. I will tell you that to me, it's a very standard and expected question in the interview process. Where's the company going? What's your plan? That sort of thing. And we now have a formidable answer. We can put it up on the screen. We can show somebody it's legit, it's real. And I think it has a ton of recruiting and retention, ancillary benefits for sure. Mm-hmm. It's the answer that people expect, really. And if you're not doing it, you're missing that opportunity in the recruitment interview process.
That's awesome. So I guess looking back, what are some of the most significant lessons you've learned in this process?
I think like a lot of things I've learned over the 22 years is you just absolutely have to lean into the uncomfortable. You have to trust the process. Of course, you have to hire the right people to facilitate. And that's just like an interview for a company. There's a piece of that is the hard skills. They have to know how to do that job, but it's got to be somebody that will that you can work well with, that you have the comfort level that you're going to be open to feedback. You're going to get some hard, direct feedback, and you have to be ready and in the right mindset for that. And for me, my experience is, it was uncomfortable for me. And 1 year later from when we started, it's far less uncomfortable. I understand it more. All the sort of typical things when you do uncomfortable things. The benefits are absolutely worth it. I don't believe there's a person in my company that feels like this is a complete waste of time. Why are we doing this? I think that so that's sort of the people piece. From a financial piece, we did meet our financial budget profitability last year, slightly exceeded it. So the numbers speak to the success of the strategic plan in year one. And I expect that the same will be true for year two, and likely we will exceed our profitability even more. And you still have to do all the other things that a small business has to do well, but this piece is going to set you up that much closer, better for success and repeated success year over year.
That's really awesome.
I love the get comfortable in the uncomfortable. What I find is that the unknown is the scariest part. And I always say you should raise your hand if you know 60% of the process, and just, go with your gut and work with, facilitators or whomever to carry you through the process. So important.
So I got one or two more questions for you. So how do you see, now that you've been in a year and you've seen success and you've seen, I'm assuming, growth in your team as a result of doing this process, how do you see the strategic plan evolving for your business, like as you guys become pros at planning?
I think that this year, all the participants came more prepared for the planning sessions. We're past sort of the, why do you do a strategic plan? Here's the components. Here's what I need from you. And we're more into the meat of substance, goals, what we're driving for, the vocabulary that I heard in the planning sessions this year, just different language. We're using the right language. We're talking about the right things now, and that took some time. That was easily half of the first year, but I think that it's solidified the group. People are working together on this thing with really the same goals, the same language.
So if you had one piece of advice to any other business owners that's thinking about starting a strategic plan, what would it be?
It's like anything. It's like a diet. It's like the gym. It's like anything that's hard to do is usually worth doing. And I liken it, you have to remain consistent throughout the year. It can't be something that you half-heartedly commit to and that you do when the timing's right or when you have free time. So you have to stay diligent about it. You have to stay on top of that game, and you just need to start and not let the fear, of perfect getting in the way of good. Getting into the process, hiring a facilitator is absolutely necessary in my mind. I don't think we're unique, but small businesses tend to not have this skill set. They certainly don't have it in-house. And if you don't hire somebody, you're not going to focus on it. You're not going to fix problems or take advantage of opportunities in the company.
That's great. Kathy?
I would say the two key things is that you have to have commitment from the top, from the executive leadership team. Take the leap, and you have to set aside the time away from the day-to-day business to dedicate to strategic thought, strategic planning, to go through this process and do it effectively. And then on the back end, it's setting up the right meeting cadences so that you can include your team and hold them accountable to achieve. Because once you achieve those goals and objectives, you'll see it with the profitable growth of the organization. You will clearly see it. Hire the right people. In Jeff's case, you have the right processes that are streamlined, and you have expectations on profitable growth and what the financials should look like and what, go, no go on a project. If you meet all of your goals and objectives, you're going to see that with profitable growth. So it's exciting. It's exciting to watch the process.
Yeah, it's actually very exciting to hear just the growth you've had in just 1 year, Jeff. So thanks so much for sharing your story with us. Always a good find, Kathy. I wanted to thank all of our listeners for listening to our first episode of our second season of the Build Your People podcast with Kathy Humm and Jenn Dewees as we continue to tackle the construction industry's biggest HR issues. So now you've created and implemented a strategic plan for your organization. And next, we have a plan, and therefore you have a plan to grow and sustain that growth in the right direction. So join us next episode while we discuss succession planning. If any of our listeners have a topic or question they'd like us to cover, please share them in the comments. Please check out all the links and resources in the show notes and follow us on social media. That's all for this episode. See you next time.